Welcome to ILOC 2025, our afternoon breakout session, which is called Using Data and State Data Center Services to Evaluate Library Services. My name is Mary Ann Morey. I'm the Central District Consultant here at the State Library, and with me are two of my colleagues, Amanda Grom, who is the Library Resources Technician for Northwest and Southwest Districts, and Gary Kroeb, who will be presenting our session. And Gary is the coordinator of the State Data Center. So if you attended our lunchtime keynote speaker, she talked a lot about the American Community Survey and some other resources that Gary is going to delve into more deeply, and that I'm happy to report you can readily access from our own state data center. A couple of housekeeping things. You do not have microphone rights or video rights, only the presenters do, but that's okay because we have chat. Please put your questions and relevant comments into the chat. We will be keeping an eye on those, and I'll be asking those questions of Gary at the appropriate times, which might be at the end of our session when he has completed sharing the information. So Amanda, I'm going to let you stop your share. So Gary, you can pull up your slides.
Okay.
And Gary has been our coordinator of the State Data Center since 2001. So a couple of decades. Gary's got this down pat. He is amazing. And I know I am not the only district consultant who relies heavily on him for information when we help libraries with our strategic planning. So Gary, I will let you take it away to tell us how we can evaluate library services with State Data Center services.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate the time. As mentioned, my name is Gary Kroeb, and I am the coordinator for the State Data Center here at the State Library. We're going to do a couple different things in today's session. Hopefully, my plan is to leave plenty of time for questions and at the end, but I'm also hoping to show you some live demonstrations of where the data is on the website and how to access it. So we'll go over the services and some of the data sources that I use that then I push out to you all. As I mentioned, we'll navigate the State Data Center website, and then we'll also look at the big stat book, which is something hopefully most of you are familiar with. So what is a state data center? It is actually a federal state cooperative program with the U.S. Census Bureau, all 50 state, island areas, and territories. So every state in the nation has somebody like me. In most cases, there's more than one me over in their states, but in Iowa, you're all stuck with just me. And really, our purpose is to alleviate some of the burden on Census Bureau's staff, so rather than trying to contact the Census Bureau to find information about Iowa, you contact somebody in the state and somebody who knows the state better than what they might know over there in Alexandria, Virginia. So that is my primary role, or at least it was initially when I first started. It's also kind of evolved over time that it's not just looking at census data, but also all other types of data and helping Iowans understand what's out there and how to access that data. Some of the services that I do provide here, the website, which we will see, has a lot of census data available. I do now, as of January 1st, I'm in charge of the public library statistics as well, answering all kinds of data requests. There's data mapping capabilities here in the office that I can do. Most of it's already available on the website, but I can do some custom stuff possibly at time. I do create these statistical profiles for Iowa communities and Iowa population groups annually each year. They come out, I'll show you a couple of them, but they come out based on the calendar year. So I'll be working on African Americans in Iowa later this month. Well, actually, the month's almost over, isn't it? Sometime early February to get it out for part of Black History Month. And then the last two really are conversations that I have with people when they give me a call or through email. And that is, especially with the internet out there, there are a lot of different data sources out there, a lot of different data elements that you can look at, you can stumble across. And I am, here to help you understand potentially good data from bad data, but also how to use that data that you can find online, either if it's on my site or on other people's site, and really just best practices, if you will, on those data sources. So this is just a generic slide I almost always throw up when I give these presentations is, why is data important? I know why it's important because I use it every day, but for a lot of folks, I think it's, when you start thinking numbers, it can get a little scary, but I think it's important to understand that data can tell a story and it can tell you, give you information about your community, not just that very first bullet point, how many people live there, but what's the makeup of your community? How many single parents do you have? What's the health insurance coverage like in your community? What's the English language learner or language spoken at home data like? So, how many foreign speakers might you have in your community that you could then use for budget and planning purposes as well? What's the educational level? These are just a couple of the different questions that you can answer using census data primarily, but using actually some of the other data sources that are out there as well. So when I talk census data sources, there's those three right there: census surveys and estimates. And we're going to kind of get into those here in a little bit. But then I also mentioned that we do have the public library survey. You're all much more familiar with it probably than I am. It's an annual survey of all the public libraries here in the state, and we'll touch on that as well. I also do have some state agency data, primarily from the Department of Education and Health and Human Services. The tables that I have generally are more complementary towards census data. So the Census Bureau looks at language spoken at home, and I have a table on my website from the Department of Education that looks at English language learners. So it's kind of a complementary source to look at data gathered by the state as well as data gathered by the federal government and see how we can get maybe a clearer picture of what, in this case, language spoken in our communities looks like. And then we do purchase population projections here at the state library from Woods and Pool. These are county level projections, so I can't give you projections out to 2060 on your individual cities, but I can do that, for your county. So if you're curious what the population trends look like for your county, or your the racial makeup in your county, the employment statistics for your county, these are something that we can provide on the county level from Woods and Pool out to 2060. I get updates every year, so that's something you can always contact me for, even if you've gotten it a couple of years ago. If you want more updated information, you can give me a call. I'm not allowed to put it online because it is proprietary, but I am allowed to share it with people. So Census Bureau stats, what are we looking at here? As I mentioned, we have three different terminologies really in the Census Bureau land. They talk about the decennial census or censuses, because there's also an economic census, but then there's American Community Survey and then population estimates. Decennial census in this case is the count of the population in housing units. So they do it every 10 years, decennial, and it goes out to everybody in the nation and to fill out, ask a variety of questions, and then that data is released. Surveys generally are obviously not sent out to everyone in the United States. It's a survey of the population, so it's really a smaller population sample that they send out, asking a lot more detailed questions that we then use the data, or they use the data to extrapolate more broadly across the entire nation, state, and counties, cities, and whatnot, using that sample. Estimates look at demographic, social, economic, and then the people. Then there's the final product that comes out every year. And that's population estimates. That's from their estimates program. And that really is generally just a count of the population that is released each year for nation, state, counties, and cities all across the country. There are some demographic characteristics that are also available annually from this program that look at age, race, sex, and Hispanic origin, but that would only be down to the county level. That's not actually available for cities. So for city population, for city estimates each year, I can get you an updated city population count. But if we wanted to look at some, demographic or social characteristics, that's when we would go to use the American Community Survey versus that population estimates program. I mentioned the decennial first. Decennial, as I mentioned, is every 10 years. So in the last 2 years, last 2 decades, 2010, 2020, they made a big overhaul in 2010 on the decennial census, and they went from asking a variety of questions to really only asking I think they say 10 questions and 10 minutes is what it takes, but it's really just asking these topics: your age, sex, race, Hispanic origin, household relationships. So when I'm filling out the form, who lives in the household with me and what is their relationship to me? And then the tenure, which is, do you own or rent your home? Those are really the only questions that are asked on the decennial census. Just as a note, there is a difference between race and Hispanic origin. Race, it would be white, Black, African American, Asian, American Indian, Alaska Native. Those are race categories set up by the Office of Management and Budget in DC. And then Hispanic origin is really for in this case, are you Hispanic or are you not Hispanic? And that is an ethnicity. Again, a question that's required by Office of Management and Budget over in Washington. Just as a follow up. So to kind of understand the differences between those two, you can be white Hispanic and you can be white non-Hispanic. You can be Black Hispanic and Black non-Hispanic. So they are two separate categories. American Community Survey data, which is again, it is an annual survey that goes out across the nation, asks a lot more questions than the decennial that does every 10 years. And this is just a sample by subject category of some of the data elements that are available on the American Community Survey. A lot of this data is available on my website, which I'll show you in a little bit. But I like showing this slide compared to this slide when you got 6 elements every 10 years versus this is a level of data that we get every year. This level of data goes down to, well, it technically goes down to like the block group, but for our purposes here, this is available on the city level in Iowa. So we can get poverty, income, we can get marital history, place of birth data. We can get all of that down to the smallest city in Iowa. Now, since it is a survey, there is something you'll see on the website that they call their margin of error because they're making I don't want to say a guesstimate, but they're making using the data they have available, they're producing an estimate on their survey, and then there's a margin of error that tells you their level of confidence on that number. And so for smaller communities or for smaller population groups, say you wanted to look at American Indian and Alaska Natives in Iowa, that margin of error might be a little higher because they're a little less sure about that number, but there's still at least a number that's there for you, and then they're very transparent about their level of confidence with that number, and then you can choose to do with it what you will.
Gary, is it the American Community Survey that talks about, I don't see it on the list here, it
Sure.
talks about the commute time?
Yeah, actually it's there. It's under economic, under class of work or
Oh,
commuting,
I see it there. Yeah,
journey to work and
I
play.
just think that's so useful for
Yeah.
libraries to determine what your hours will be. I know I've helped libraries with strategic planning who realized we're closing before anybody would ever be able to get here based on a long commute time in that community. So that was
Yeah.
an impetus for a smaller library to change its hours, which led to a boon in the number of people coming to the library.
Well, and one of the nice things is prior to 2010, these kind of questions were only asked every 10 years on the decennial census. It wasn't, not everyone got this, but they only asked it once every 10 years. And so you'd get this data like in 2001, 2002, it's kind of valuable, but by 2007, it was less valuable because, things change over time. With the American Community Survey, this data comes out every year. And so you're constantly getting updates on, in this case, commuting. And when you have things like, a global pandemic that, kind of affect the number of people on the road or where people are working, you can get some real time data about what our society looks like at any given point versus what did it look like in 2020, say if this was just being asked every 10 years. So that is one of the nice things I think about the fact that the American Community Survey is available to us on an annual basis. These are the primary Iowa geographic areas that the Census Bureau has some data on. There's actually way more than this, but these are the ones I focus on a lot. Most of the data on my site, I don't really have township data. I can get it, but most of the data I have is for the nation, states, and then I have all 99 counties in Iowa, 940 cities, they call them places, incorporated places, but that's cities. 327 school districts we have data for. There's 9 metropolitan areas in our state that kind of, a couple of them cross borders, but generally we have 9. Metropolitan statistical areas are, there's some guidelines on how you become a metro or a micro, but in essence, anything over 50,000 is probably a metropolitan area. Micropolitan is that 20,000 to 50,000 population range. Again, there are some other um, nuances to that. Commuting patterns is one of them. So just because you have 21,000 doesn't necessarily make you a micropolitan area. There has to be some other conditions, but we do have 15 micropolitan areas in our state. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the library, public library statistics that we have. And again, this is something you're probably all much more aware of. And so this is the content that's on the public library survey. I'm preaching to the choir on this one. Really, the slide is on here to remind me what all I'm going to be asking you, on an annual basis, and the kind of data that's going to be available or is available and going to be available through the state library. That public library survey asks a number of questions, and these are a variety of topics on visits, circulation, electronic resources, revenues and expenditures. And these are things that, again, we ask every year. We produce a publication that is then available to you, so you can look at your library in comparison to other libraries. And that data also comes out, again, every year. The location for the Iowa Library Statistics. Currently, this is what the website looks like. There are some changes. I don't know if anyone's talked about that yet, but the website's going to be revamped a little bit. So it may not look like this soon, but in essence, all of this information is still going to be there. This is the library statistics landing page. You'll notice off on the right, you'll have Iowa Public Library Statistics FY21 to 23. That's where the big stat book is. I'll show you that in a second. Web Connect is actually, I believe I talked with somebody from Bibliostat. You actually have a session next after me about Web Connect if you're interested. Jan's going to be going over what that portal looks like and how the kind of data that you can get from them, which saves me time. I don't have to show you. I was kind of glad to hear about it. And then here in the middle, we have some rural library funding and city tax rates and library levies. This is data that gets updated every year that we use, but also then is available to the general public. This is just that front page of that big stat book that hopefully you all are quite familiar with. This comes out annually. This is a 2023 book that Scott, his last hurrah that he produced last year. This will be updated again this year with the fiscal year 2024 data. It will be released in a similar format as a PDF. Due to some accessibility issues, we will be having to make some changes potentially on how we publish the big stats book. We're not going to stop producing it. It will be there. It just may not be a PDF. We're going to spend some time exploring how we can possibly push this data out to you, maybe even make it a little bit more user friendly. As you'll see on my site, I'm a big visualization guy, a dashboard person. So I like giving you the power to get what you want rather than a static book anyway. So we might be looking at something like that. But this is just something that is available currently. I think online it goes back to fiscal year 2021. Yeah.
And I just put the link in the chat to
Oh,
access the list of the currently published Big Stats books, which are so incredibly helpful.
Yes.
Comparing yourself within past years. What's our trend? Has our door count gone up or down? Have our programming stats changed? Are we getting more attendance at teen programs than we are at preschool programs? What does this mean for our future programming? And then looking at how you compare with other libraries of similar size, it's an incredibly useful tool to tell the library story.
Yeah, there's a lot of information in there. I was actually, when I first started discussing this project with Scott, and I really got into how much data is collected. There's a wealth of information here, and again, there's a historical component to it, so that you can then see change over time. Which the guy who loves data is great. As far as a point in time, I like a number, but I much rather see how that number has changed over time, because I think that tells a better, more interesting story at times, personally. This is the landing page for the Web Connect. Again, like I said, there'll be a session after me that if you wanted to attend, but I won't go into it too much. This is a product done by Bibliostat Connect. It's online. I believe if you click on that log into Web Connect, there's a page. Oh no, off on the right there, some generic usernames and generic passwords, so that anyone can log in and use this tool. I think I have, yeah, this is what it looks like when you get in. And so you select a state. You don't even have to look at Iowa. You could look at other states and the libraries in them. And then you can look at, your library and how it compares to another library, how it, you can look, you can go much farther back in time than we can go currently online. I mean, we have the data too, but as far as accessibility, the Web Connect goes back farther. There are some limitations about like the number of items you can compare or the number of libraries or the number of years. There's some limitations, but it's a nice little tool. If you haven't looked at it, I strongly recommend taking a peek at it. I also strongly suggest the next session and getting a little bit more in depth on their tools, which is why I will not.
Harry, you did allude to this, mentioned it briefly, but Web Connect will compare your library to other libraries nationwide.
Yes.
The big stat book is comparing your library with other Iowa libraries.
Yeah. You can also compare it to Iowa libraries through the Web Connect too,
True.
but you have the flexibility. You can do more than what the big stat book allows. So
Yeah, and just for those of you that might be new to librarianship, just realize that that annual survey is not something we create on our own. Don't blame us. That
yeah,
is a federal survey that all the libraries in the nation are completing, and the majority of those questions come from a federal level, and that's the information that's going into Web Connect as well. So,
which is what this slide is showing. This is actually from IMLS. This is the Public Library Survey, which is a national thing that they tell us here's the data we need, and then we push that out to you folks to get the information. There's a couple of state questions in there that we're also interested in as well, but this is a federal program that we're all involved in, and it's good to get the information out there and get the kind of data, again, not just on a state level, but on a national level, but also comparing yourself to other libraries if you are so inclined across the nation as well. Okay, so now we're going to do the state data center website. I don't know, I sent some slides, so theoretically, or handouts, so you might have these available to you either now or at some point. There are some screenshots here, but I'm going to go away from this and go to the website because it's just, for me, it's a little easier to show you the website in a live format. So we're going to go to, not there.
Gary and Amanda, maybe you can help out here. I
Yeah.
think you may have to stop your share. And
Yeah, I'm
then
going to do that. I'm still trying to find the other share. Hold on a second. Oh, I can stop share now too, but where is it? Okay.
while Gary's doing that, I mentioned in the chat that we use this, and I mentioned it earlier too, that consultants use a lot of this information for strategic planning purposes. But in our last session, a lot of the librarians were saying how they use this also for grant writing. So be thinking about both of those aspects as Gary goes through this.
Okay, so you should all be seeing my site, the State Data Center website. If you're not, holler. This is the main page. Navigation wise, a lot of stuff up here is at the top, but there also is here in the center the ability to browse by subject, but that's the same as this top navigation bar as well. We put a navigation by subject utility in there mainly because we were revamping the website, and I had luckily had somebody helping me who doesn't know data and wasn't making some of the assumptions that I was. And I said, well, everyone knows what the data source is, and that's where they're going to search. And like, well, no, a lot of people don't. And so this is a little easier way to get to some of the data if you're just looking for information about government information or migration. That's people moving from here to there. So the data by subject is really helpful if you're um, not quite sure what what data source you want to look at. So I always like to point people in that direction. Not every table is going to be there. So if you're looking at age and sex, you're not going to see every single table I have on age and sex, but you're going to see, some good information that's there. Data by source is the way I do everything, and it's a little bit more detailed, and it is literally by the different types of data that I have. And so the American Community Survey, which I mentioned, the decennial census, those annual population estimates. I do have some other federal sources. Really, it's primarily other Census Bureau sources, but Census has other surveys that aren't the decennial and aren't American Community Survey. So that's what some of those tables are. State agencies I mentioned, and then the legacy dashboards. That very last link, that'll take you to, gosh, 2 or 3 iterations ago of a website when I first started in 2001. That's what the site looked like before we revamped the first time in 2010, I think. But the reason that's still available to you all, if you're looking for stuff, is it has a lot of older data. So if you're looking for city level data from like 1990 or 2000, it's going to be a better source than some of my current dashboards, because I don't have I didn't, some of that stuff wasn't actually digital. It was all print, and so we had to manually input everything in. And so it's just a spot that if you need older data, you might look there if you can't find it on the more recent information. I'm going to jump over quick facts for a second, because that's an important one and I want to spend some time on it. Geography is just going to, I didn't mean to go to it. Sorry, it's got some maps and some, if you're curious what a census tract is, you can look at the 2020 census tracts. It's more for GIS folk probably, but if you are interested in what the boundaries look like for specific geographic areas, that would be a spot to go.
Gary, since you
Yeah.
mentioned this would be a good question about those maps. If someone is trying to determine who might be outside the incorporated boundaries of the city, would that be a place to go, or would they have to go more locally to find something like that?
Um, uh, so yes and no. Sorry, I don't mean to be wishy-washy on
That's a
this.
question we get asked quite often.
Yeah, no, I
Trying to
appreciate
determine
that.
open access from city residents.
So the best on this geography, on this reference map page, the best spot you're going to have for that would be like the most current census tract outlines from 2020. Those would have boundary limits for the cities, but those would be 2020 boundary limits. And city boundaries change a lot. I honestly would probably go through we have a GIS, a state GIS system. Well, it used to be Office of Chief Information Office, but I think now they're part of Department of Management. Like I'm not positive, but that's something. If somebody wanted to contact me, I could look that up for you. But since it changes pretty frequently due to annexations and whatnot, um, this wouldn't give you probably the most current boundary. Now, if your city hasn't changed in the last 5 years, then yeah, the census tract outlines, it would be available on there. Their PDFs. I click on the link, but again, I'm not sure on the sharing if you would see the PDF. But their PDFs, you can zoom in. They go down to a block level, so you can look at the block, so you can actually see very specific boundary lines. But they're from 2020, so it would really depend on your city. And if your city has changed a little bit over since that point, and actually the 2020 boundaries would have been from 2019, probably when they drew the maps.
Okay. Just
That's
wondered, because
just
that is a question we get asked quite a
Oh
bit.
no, and I really appreciate that. I like those kind of questions. I just hate when I can't give you an exact answer in that case. Um, Publications, this is where as I mentioned, I have those data profiles that I create. Um, Again, you'll see the 9 primary profiles that I produce each year. These all are from 2024 because the year just finished. You'll start seeing an updated 2025 profile as the year progresses for each of these. Below that, the state of Iowa actually produced their own state census back in the 1800s to the early 1900s. I'm staring at the books right now on my shelf, but we had those digitized, so they're available if you're interested in looking at some of the older data from the state of Iowa produced. And then there was a group up at Iowa State that produced something that's called Iowa Counties, disbanded in '89. It used to be really, really popular. People cited it a lot. Again, since the most recent one I have, I think, is 2001. I'm guessing most people aren't using it as much, but it's there if people needed it to be. So now we'll go back to the quick facts. Hovering over, I'm assuming you can see there are 4 different quick facts that I produce. I produce a state quick fact, counties, city, and then the census tract, which I mentioned earlier. We're going to really talk about the first 3. The census tracts are very specific. A census tract is kind of breaking up a county into smaller levels. And so, if you're a rural county, a census tract, you're going to have like 2 census tracts in your county, and you're not going to be able to get, real small level geography. But say you were Des Moines has a lot of census tracts within the city limits. So if you're looking for like a neighborhood in Des Moines, a census tract might be a really good way to get at a neighborhood as opposed to just looking at the city. But the first 3, the state, county, city, all look and operate the same. We're going to look at the city quick facts. And this is using Tableau software. And really, these are just, well, the Census Bureau still does, but they call them population profiles, and they kind of looked at parts of like the American Community Survey. It didn't give you, all the data, but gave you some of it. I took their profiles and I produced these visualizations that kind of look at some of these higher level data elements that allow you to kind of look at your community in a little bit more specific way. Again, not as detailed as you can get, but it's a good reference point. It's a good starting point, and we can always get more data if you need it, or more detailed. The tabs up here at the top: demographic, social, economic. All those quick facts are going to have those. I'll show them to you briefly. But demographic is going to generally look at age, sex, race, and Hispanic origin. So, we have the population here total for Burlington, their age breakdown by gender, which is visualized here with a age pyramid. And if you hover over it, you can actually get the count. So you can see the number of males in Burlington. 55 to 59 was 882. So any point you hover, you can get that data as a pop-up if you're looking for it. Up here, there's a city drop-down. So obviously you're not all from Burlington. So if you wanted to find your city, did I hear somebody said Forest City, right?
Yeah, I think I saw Forest City.
Yeah, I think I did too. So let's try to see if I can scroll down to Forest. My buttons aren't working to type it in. You should be able to type it in and it would scroll down, but it was acting up on me. If we go to Forest City, repopulates. Now this shows all that data with Forest City as the primary display. Here's the race and Hispanic origin data, and then the median age by race and Hispanic origin. Again, there's a drop down. So if you wanted to look at African Americans, their median age for Forest City, you can do that. If we now select social or economic, went really quick, but in both cases, you can see that Forest City is now the default. So once you've made a selection on one of the tabs, it's universal for all 3 tabs. So you don't have to reselect Forest City, which is kind of nice, I think. And I'm not just saying that because I did it, but I'm saying it because I think it's kind of nice. Social characteristics that are available on this quick fact look at educational attainment, average household and family size, veteran service, disability, and then ancestry. The ancestry component here looks at the top 10 ancestries for that community. So it's not always going to look at these 10. It'll be really dependent on what city you select. So Polish is here for Forest City, but it might not be if you were looking at, say, Solon, Iowa. It would be a different 10 and in a different order based on that city. And then economic characteristics look at unemployment. This is that mean travel time. So commuting to work, you can see the differences from 2000 to the American Community Survey. that I'm using, which is the 2019 to 2023. Didn't talk to you about that. A little bit more information maybe you want, but for small levels of geography, we have to use what's called a 5-year American Community Survey. So they gather data for 5 years and then produce a number. It still comes out each year, but it's for a different 5-year period. So this 2019 and 2023 just came out. Next December, they'll release the 2020 to 2024 American Community Survey for forest cities in this case, and we can look at, what those numbers look like. Here's the poverty rates by family type for Forest City, occupation percentages, how that's changed, as well as median incomes and how that has changed, in this case from 1990 through to the most current ACS. So this is, again, available. You can select any city in Iowa and get these quick facts. This is on my side under quick facts, but the other nice thing that you can do if you ever need it. So, if you want to come here, you can come here as often as you want. That's fantastic. But if this is something that you want to send to somebody or to even embed on your own websites, if you have that capability, there is a possibility down here where it says share. I'm assuming you're seeing that part. And so what you can do is you can share this dashboard, and you can share it in 2 different ways. The current view, which is you've selected Forest City, so it'll share Forest City. If you select the original, I think it was at Burlington, I remember. So Burlington would be what you would share, but you wouldn't really want to do that. But you can do
That
2
is so
things.
cool.
You
I
can
didn't know
send,
we could do that.
yeah, so you can do 2 things. You can send an email link to somebody. So if somebody in your library board, if you were wanting to send this information out, you could just send the link to an email. It won't send them to my site. It'll send them to this dashboard, but technically all of our dashboards live on Tableau's server called Tableau Public. And so it'll send you there, but it's still my stuff and it'll still be Forest City, but you just won't necessarily have the state library banner and stuff at the top or the bottom. The other option is this embed code. If you just select it and click copy and paste, you could copy this code and put it into your website. And then the nice thing about that is anytime I then change this dashboard, I add the most current year, your embed will repopulate with the new data as well.
I was just going to ask that question. That is
Yes.
so good to know. What a
Yeah.
great trick.
So yeah, so if it's something you can put on your website, you can theoretically grab it and you never have to worry about it again. I have to worry about it. I have to worry about it. I mean, I'm not going to your website, but I have to, every year I'll be updating these dashboards, and it'll just update on your site as well when I do that. So that is what the quick facts look like. Again,
And you mentioned sending that as an email, Gary. It
yeah.
makes me think this would be a great way for people if you're doing like a focus group of some type or a planning for results and you have a community team, you could send these quick facts directly to those participants via email so they could look at the data prior to the discussion groups that you'd be having. What a great tool.
The other thing that is nice, you can download this data. This dashboard just is kind of a little crazy how I created it, so it doesn't play as well as some of the ones I'll show you shortly. But you can actually download this as a PDF. I believe, though, if I download it as a PDF, I think I'm only going to get right now the economic tab because that's what's active. You can download it as a cross tab, so some of the data that's in there, you can select which, if you want to just get the data, not the visualization, you can do that. You can also get an image shot of it, but again, I think it would just be the whatever tab you're in right now. So it's a little bit more restrictive, but it is something you can still do if you wanted to, create a PDF and send it. That is possible.
Hey, Gary, we have a question. Somebody said
Yeah.
she's looking for the information on the ACS about commute time, but doesn't find it. And I don't know, Felicia, if you were looking at the quick facts, that commute time is under the economic tab, which Gary has on the slide right now. It's over toward the right, but you do need to click on the economic tab.
And they call it mean travel time to work. They don't call it commuting.
Does that answer your question? If not,
I can also, when I go to the ACS tables, we can look specifically at commuting, and we can look at that report specifically too. Okay. Um, if that covers that, again, like I said, I can show you here, the county quick facts. I'm just going to click it open, and this is for Scott County, and you'll see it just, again, looks just like what you saw for the city, functions the same way. We can go to Cerro Gordo. We have the demographic, we have social characteristics, the exact same social characteristics. Again, so you'll see here, German's almost always going to be at the top in most most of our communities and counties, not all of them, but so. But if you look at the ancestry, you'll see there are, these are different 10 ancestries for this county versus what we saw in Forest City. I know Forest City is not in Cerro Gordo. I'm just pointing out that that changes based on what you select, and then click on economic. Again, it has the exact same data. So if the reason I point this out is if you are looking at your community, but you also want to see how it stacks up to your county, you can go to the county quick fact and you can get the exact same data, the exact same layout. The color scheme may be a little different, but that's neither here nor there. But that way you can, you're comparing an apples to apples versus maybe searching online somewhere and finding a different data source or a different presentation type. So I think this is really nice if you are trying to look at the state versus a county or the county versus a city. The quick facts allow you to do that very quickly and easily.
Gary, we have another question.
Yep.
Someone is wondering about finding information about Iowa schools, and I'm waiting to see more specifics about that. But
Yeah.
is there data on the state data center that pertains to public schools?
Yes and no. I will show you. We're gonna go to the American Community Survey data here in a second, and I'll show you what's out there and explain what it means and what's available. So if we go here by data by source, and we're going to go to the American Community Survey, let me click on this. So this is at my ACS page. We have the demographic characteristics, we have economic, social, and then housing. Um, I am going to pick, uh, I want something that's kind of interesting. Oh, we were talking about community. Would I still have commuting up here? Economic commuting means of transportation to work. We'll look at that one. So if I click on this, generally what you're going to see, again, these are all Tableau dashboards. Most of my dashboards, the first thing you're going to see is some kind of a visualization. Some cases are interesting, some cases are not. This one's kind of not interesting, but there'll be a pretty picture to kind of visualize the data. And then right next to it, there's going to be a tab that says data table. So if I select that, if you just want the raw numbers, that is also available to you. So there's two different ways to visualize the data. Over here, usually on the right, unless I can't fit it over there because of constraints, is your filters, your ways of delving into this data and making it a little bit more personal. So we can look at these different geographic levels on all of my reports. We can look at it for the nation, state, county, city, metropolitan, micropolitan areas, and then school districts. School districts is going to be the boundary of the school district, not the school age children. So like if I click on school districts and then I clicked a geographic name, and let's say we want to look at something that's got some information interesting, Bondurant for our. So this is a Bondurant for our community school district. So people who live within that school district, how are they driving to work? Majority is are driving, obviously by car or van. But right now, the kind of interesting number since COVID has been this work from home, to see how that has changed over time. So to answer that previous question, the school data that I have is boundary based, so it's about the school district, not necessarily about the school, um, the schools itself. The exception to that, and I'm going to jump here, and I apologize, but I just want to address it on this state agency report that I do have. If we look at the data I get from the Iowa Department of Education, this is English language learners. This actually is looking at the students within, these particular school districts. So if we wanted to learn, this is the languages spoken. So all the different, if you hover over a bubble, you can see there's 13 students in the Iowa City School District that speak Amharic. Again, if you look at the crosstab, which can be a little bit more helpful, just filter by, we're just going to get the most current year because there's a lot of blanks here. This case in Blackhawk County, if we look at the Cedar Falls School District, here are the number of students that speak these individual languages in that school district. So that is school specific or school district specific. Again, I'm getting this information from the Department of Ed, and so that's my way of saying they do have a number of data elements available on their website that look at a variety of things. They have demographic characteristics if you're interested in age or, well, not age, because that's grade level primarily, but race and Hispanic origin. They can tell you the number of Hispanics that are in any given school district. You can look at reading levels, you can look at graduation rates, etc. That is all available on their site. I'm not interested in trying to reproduce another state agency's website. Really, the only reason I have this or the public health, not public health, health and human services data that I have is, again, it's complementary towards census data, which I have. And in this case, this is not actually a data set that they have on their website. This is a unique run that they do for me. So if this is really, as far as I know, the only place you can get detailed languages spoken at school districts in Iowa. Does
And
that
Gary,
kind of answer the question?
yes, and I put some other things in the chat as well.
Okay, great.
And Rachel, I think some of those resources, not only what Gary has shown here, but what would be available in the recording of our keynote lunchtime speaker, will be able to provide you with that information you're looking for grant purposes. Gary, we've got about 5 minutes left.
Yes. So the only last thing I just want to point out is, again, these operate just like the quick facts. So if city, Albert City, again, not very interesting, but let's say you wanted to send this to somebody, or you wanted to share this on your website. That they all have that share button where you can embed this into your website, or you can send this specific dashboard to anyone you want to with that link component. I just want to make sure everyone understood that the functionality is the same across all of my dashboards, not just the quick facts. So, and with that, I will take any other questions that might be out there.
I haven't seen any other questions come in, but I know that, Gary, you have spreadsheets of teeny tiny numbers that if somebody really wants to get into the data, they can request those from you about their cities, because I often request this information from you for strategic planning purposes. One of the stats that I remember seeing in a community that I thought was pretty interesting was the fact that the majority of people were living in homes that were considered older homes, like built in the 1950s and before.
Yeah.
And so I pointed that out because I found that to be somewhat unusual. I hadn't really noticed that in other communities. And so the library staff and I talked about what could you do with this stat? And we determined that maybe some programming on do-it-yourself repairs for homeowners would be a successful thing to do in their community. So it can be really eye-opening to look at some of this data and think, how does this affect my library hours, my library programming, my library outreach, my library collection? So many of those resources and things that we do on a regular basis can be greatly affected when you look at the statistical data. You're trying to do a story time program and you can't get anybody to attend. Well, look at your data. Maybe you don't have a lot of preschoolers living in your area, or maybe everybody is working and commuting 30 minutes outside of town. That might explain why you're having trouble getting preschoolers to attend story times during the day at your library.
Exactly. And you teed this up really well for my last slide. This is my contact information. There is way more data available than what I've had time to show you. But even, you go through my website, you can look at a lot of different things, but even my website doesn't have everything that's out there for, every single community in our state. It's got a lot, it's got the most requested stuff, but there's always potentially more. And so I'm here to help you find data and understand what's out there. So and I'm not saying I don't want you to look on my site and try to find the information yourself, but I don't want you spending 2 hours looking for something that's going to take me 5 minutes to find for you and to get to you. or even worse, for me to tell you it doesn't exist. So if you're looking for something, you think it might exist, or you're not sure, but you want to know if it, where it's at, please feel free to give me a call. Well, you can give me a call. Feel free to email me. If I'm being honest, that is a better way to get a hold of me. But you're free to call at any time. I'm here to help you with this kind of stuff. And again, as my role is evolving over time here, and that's going to hold true for public library statistics as well. So if you're starting to look for or needing some information about public libraries, stuff that was in the survey, historical stuff, current stuff, please feel free to reach out. I am your point of contact on getting you that information and helping you with it.
I know one thing I do as a consultant when I help with strategic planning for our libraries, I will meet with boards and staff and review some of the statistical data that Gary has available by using a worksheet that helps the board and the staff to really analyze those numbers. So don't hesitate to reach out to your district consultants as well. If you get some of this data and you're going, okay, I see these numbers, but what does that mean? We can help you interpret possibly how you can look at those numbers from a library perspective and use it to determine some of the things, the services and resources you might be providing at your library. So don't hesitate to reach out to us as well. Like Gary said, we're all here to help. So just contact us. Thank you, Gary. This was very good. You always do such a great job of providing this kind of data. I love the quick facts. I think anybody who has used those before loves that feature.
Yeah,
It's
I've
helpful.
had them for quite a while, and I keep pushing them out because I want more people to know that they exist. I'm not just saying it because I created them. I think they're a valuable tool and they can be
They
used
are.
by a lot of different people. So
Yeah. Okay, I'm Amanda. I think you got that link for the CE credit. If this is your last session of ILOC, you will want to complete that CE form. There's the link in the chat. If you're planning to attend more sessions, please hang around and wait before you complete that form. We do have another breakout session this afternoon. And we also have an evening session tonight at 6 o'clock that is geared especially for trustees, but equally valuable for all library employees, directors, and other staff as well. One last question here, and a little bit past time, so if you need to leave, we understand that. But Gary, if you can hang around and answer this one last question. Library Journal used to post data from libraries across the U.S., and somebody's wondering if they do that anymore. And Gary,
yeah, I'm not sure.
I recall seeing some information about that, and I can't think of what that report was called. I'm going to say it started with the letter H, which sounds like I'm playing some kind of a game. Um, I don't recall seeing that recently, but it may just be because
Yeah,
I've been busy with other stuff and the article went
yeah,
past.
yeah. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if that they still were, but I just can't think off the top of my head if I've seen it.
And a lot of what I'm guessing they would have published, as I recall, would be stuff that you can find from Web
Yes,
Connect.
100%. Yeah, yeah. It's available either on, through our big stat book or through that Web Connect tool
Yeah.
from Bibliostat. I mean, that it'd be the same type of stuff, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly.
I think so too. So, all right. Well, again, thank you, Gary, and thank you,
Okay.
Amanda, for producing. Thank you all for attending, and we hope you get to attend more of iLock today. But if not, just realize we are recording all of the sessions, so you can always access those later. Give us a couple of weeks to get those recordings posted, and then you can watch this again. You can share it with other people at your library. So, thank you all again. Bye.
Bye.